Well, we're back in, everybody. This is, you just saw an amazing document. And if any of you recognized people in the film, I was sitting in front of Larry Clark, who I could hear Larry say, oh, that's Willie Brown, or that's, you know, we're still trying to pick out who was in that crowd. And so if you recognized anybody, please come and tell me. I saw Bill Greaves and thrilled that not only is Mario Van Peebles here, but Melvin's grandson, Michaela Van Peebles, is here as well. And I'm just going to turn this mic over to both of them so they can both talk say whatever they want to say about the film we just saw, that was what you were saying, and then, of course, Melvin's film.
What time is it? Nice.
Yeah, Michaela and I were just in the lobby. We're talking about, you know, that saying you said, "Le plus ça change, le plus ça reste la même." I say it in French because my dad's film was in French. The more things change, the more they stay the same. However, there's some slight differences. When the enemy is invisible, when the target is harder to see, it's less. It's not as easy to have a cohesive response, and therefore a cohesive message that unifies as broadly. Wouldn't you say that, Cakes? Were you talking about that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we're just talking about that. But what's interesting is the struggles are still parallel. Now, here's what's interesting. They also said at the very beginning, if we form this other party, we won't just take black folks. We won't just take Latino folks. We won't just take Asian folks. They should have said women, but I'm assuming they meant that. The sisters. And they would take what they referred to at the time as the mother country radicals as well. And it's interesting in this state that we're in, there's a Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. Boy, do we live in some interesting times. And how relevant a lot of this is. It still is. And it reminds me, and just watching it with my son, how important it is to keep in mind that, you know, democracy is kind of like a car. And if you don't keep your foot on the gas, the car will slow down. You know, you take a knee and you forget to vote and say, I don't do politics. Well, politics will do your ass. And you will get trumped. So, nation time. My goodness. On that note, let's have a little fun. So, my son, Michaela, was just in New York with Granddad and talking about the restoration, and Granddad said a couple things to you.
Well, most importantly, you said, listen, if you don't know where you've been, you won't know where you're going. And I think that's very true. This last movie kind of showed us a little bit.
and to that end, the restoration of this film and keeping our history preserved is a big part of knowing where we've been and understanding then the trajectory of where we can go. What I like about that speech at the beginning where they talked about unity was Dr. King had a great quote, which I'll mangle for you, where he said, we will either learn to live together, all of us as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together on this planet as fools. And I add to that now, we have to learn to live together as brothers and sisters in harmony, also with nature. We perish together as fools. So nation time, global time, world time is upon us. And it's not just what we have to reverse in terms of how we're treating each other as black folks, white folks, straight folks, whatever. It's also the irreparable damage we're doing to this planet under this administration and what kind of world we live for our kids tomorrow that's at risk, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about a 3-day pass. Can we shift over to that? Okay, shift over to that. So the story of a 3-day pass. This is a film about this brother in the military. So he's in the part of the machine. And he meets this young French girl in France. And he has a 3-day pass. He goes on a 3-day pass and he meets this French girl. And it's this sort of irreverent love story. In a way, it sort of parallels to some degree the story of my parents, my mother and father, met at school, and he became a navigator in the Air Force. And at that time, you couldn't have a woman stay with you at the base unless she was married to you or she was a relative. My mom is not white. My mom is neon white. Now, I could use my mom as a reflector board, okay? But my mom and dad were just cool. They didn't give a shit about any of this color silly. They didn't care what skin you wore this time or in this life. They were free thinkers. And so when my mom went to the base to stay with my dad, looking nothing like my dad, and my dad was an officer, they rolled up to the base, and he had an officer sticker in the window, so the guy had to salute. And he goes over and he sees my mom and dad sitting together, and she had to present her ID. And she presented her ID, and her maiden name is Marks. And he looked at her ID, it's clearly not Van Peebles. And she said, "Oh, that's my slave name." And she stayed with my dad on the base. My dad had, until they had two problems. One, no one was really buying their cousin's routine, because they were trying to pass off his cousin. But my dad had broken the cardinal rule there, which was never become too good at a job you don't want. And he won the bombing navigation competition, where you had to bomb something and get closest to the target, and he won, and the Air Force wanted to keep him, and he wanted to become a writer and a director. And that was one problem, so they wanted to keep him as the sort of window dressing black guy in the Air Force. And the other problem is, I started to come along. And that was totally going to blow the cousin story out of the water. So they went across the border to Mexico through the big shiny door going the opposite way. And they had me, and that's why, I never knew this, until they finally told me, I got this name Mario. Now, what kind of black guy get? That's not a Otis, Laurent, Mario? Really? Anyway, so I was born in Mexico. Little brown baby in Mexico, why not? So they named me Mario. So that's how I got the name. Anyway, so 3 Day Pass mirrors to some degree my parents' story. And 3 Day Pass won the 1968 film festival. My dad had come to Hollywood to try to get a job as a filmmaker. They said we don't need, he was a cable car operator at the time, you know that. They said we don't need cable car operators trying to be film directors. He says, no, you're not making the kind of films that black folks want to see. That's why they're not working. You got to make films we want to see ourselves in. You got us as the Motisa class, Motisa, low coffee, sir. So we were predominantly portrayed as the servant class. He said, we don't want to see that, man. They didn't listen, so my dad picked up his little family, my sister and I, and moved to Europe. Taught himself French. I slept in the closet. My sister slept in the bathtub. He learned French. He interviewed Malcolm X while he was in France. He became a journalist. And there was a French law that said if you are a French writer, you have the first right of refusal to direct your own work. He wrote something called the 3 Day Pass. He got la permission, and he got to direct it. And the French submitted it as the French submission to the San Francisco Film Festival. When it got into the San Francisco Film Festival, they had no idea that Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles was a brother from Chicago at all. They thought he might have been Dutch. So my dad loves telling this story, which I'll relay to you. He said, make sure you tell him the story about the airport. He said there was a little lady with blue hair at the San Francisco airport, and she goes, Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles, délégation française. Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles. And he rolls up, he's got his leather coat on, doing his little roll. He goes, yeah, baby, what's up? And she said, don't buzz me, please. Monsieur Melvin Van Peebles. And he goes, no, that's me, huh? She goes, what? He pulls out his passport. She's like, oh my God. It's like a scene in Blazing Saddles. The sheriff is, So they get there, and he said, on the way, honey, he said, on the way in the limo, he stopped to pick up a couple other folks that were hitchhiking. A hippie dude and another brother. And he said, I got to pick up my friends. They picked them up. He goes to the festival. He wins. And my dad talks more shit than the radio. He wins. Hollywood's embarrassed because the poor colored guy had to go abroad to make it. And they invited him back to make Watermelon Man. And after that, they wanted him to make another comedy. And he says, you know what? They've killed Martin, they've killed Malcolm. I don't think black America's in a laughing mood. I'm going to make a film independently called Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. That's the story. So 3 Day Pass is the one that broke it. And so thank you. Thank you so much for restoring it and seeing it and watching it. We're really happy to be here. As Granddad would say, early to bed.
Early to rise.
Work like hell.
And advertise.
And keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
Hope you enjoy it. Thank you, Sandra. And thank you for the HFPA for restoring this film. We hope you enjoy it. And the new subtitles, right? It's got new subtitles? Is that right?
I did some new subtitles because the others were not as good as they could have been. But we kept the decisions Melvin made about the subtitles, we kept. We just correct some other stuff. Anyway, I hope you like it.